Should I buy Tesla? That's the question I asked ChatGPT. Well, it turns out that that's not a great question to ask the AI tool if you want to make a good investment decision. When I asked it the right questions, I was amazed by the answers it gave me. It turns out that the tool can be a great investment companion for the retail investor. Let's dive in and I'll walk through each of the prompts I used and the results it gave me. So let's talk about why the prompt, should I buy Tesla, is not a good one. So as you can see here, it thinks, first of all, that I might be talking about the car. So it starts out by deciding whether buying a Tesla, be it a vehicle or a stock. So first of all, it's confused. It doesn't know if I'm talking about the car or the stock. I'm talking about the stock here, obviously. And so it starts to give some details around the pros and cons of each vehicle, and then it gives a bottom line on the vehicle. It says, if you're seeking a high-performing electric vehicle with access to Tesla's supercharger network, a Tesla could be a great choice. Obviously, that's not what I'm looking for, right? And then from a stock perspective, it actually does a decent job of pulling information from the web. So its current stock price, recent performance, saying that it's down 37% year to date, talks about analyst perspective, forecast, and then the bottom line says investing in Tesla carries risk due to market volatility. We all know that. And then for the final recommendation, it says if you're considering investing in Tesla, be prepared for short-term volatility. Okay, we know that. It's advisable to consult with a financial advisor to assess how this investment aligns with your portfolio and risk tolerance. Fair enough, but anyone would say that, and that's not the kind of information we're looking for. We're trying to decide based on what we know. We would like the tool to provide us with more of a concrete analysis around whether investing in Tesla is a good investment decision or not. To do this effectively, we need to understand what the tool is capable of today. It's capable of giving us an answer, but a generic answer. What the tool is more useful for today is accelerating the research that we need to do in order to make the determination on our own about if investing in Tesla stock is a good decision or not. And that's where the tool excels. And so we'll walk through that process now, step by step, and you'll be amazed by the level of detail that it will give us in helping us decide if investing in Tesla stock is a good choice or not. So let's dive in. So how do we decide what questions to ask ChatGPT in order for us to get the best possible analysis of Tesla stock? And this is kind of where we put on our investor hat, right? So prior to ChatGPT being ever available, there were certain things that we did to evaluate stocks that we were interested in investing in. And that's what we're going to do now. So there are 4 key buckets that we focus on when we're trying to analyze a stock. So the first is fundamental analysis. So that's looking at revenue growth rates, price to earnings ratio, industry performance, technical analysis, which is really about looking at how the stock is performing from a chart perspective. Is its stock price performance on a chart increasing, decreasing? What does it look like in the last week, last 3 months, last year? And how does that compare to its competitors? Sentiment analysis. So that's looking at recent news about the stock, as well as what analysts say about it as well. And then the 4th thing is understanding the competitive position, specifically how it might have changed between the last time we looked at the stock and now. These are the 4 key buckets that I'll be looking at. So it's finding the questions that fit within each of these buckets and asking those questions to determine whether the stock is worth investing in or not. Let's dive into each of these buckets. So let's start with fundamental analysis. Let's think of a question that we might ask from a fundamental perspective. We might be interested in knowing how Tesla performed in its last earnings report, what its price to earnings ratio is today compared to what it was over the last 3 months, last year, or last 5 years. We might be interested in knowing what its revenue growth rates are. And based on all that, I could summarize that question and say, provide a detailed analysis of Tesla's latest earnings report. Highlight key metrics like earnings per share, revenue growth, profit margins, and vehicle deliveries. And then we let it search. Okay, let's look at what it gave us here. So it says Tesla is scheduled to release its Q1 25 earnings report on Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. So this is good actually because it's telling us about the future. We want to know about the past. What we could do here, and it's provided a lot of great data, and we can just look down here. So it tells us what Tesla's vehicle delivered was, and it tells us where it gets the information from. So that's one of the great things about ChatGPT is that it cites its sources for the numbers it's using, and we can decide if those are great sources or not, and they're authoritative enough for us to trust or not. It tells us what the expected financial metrics will be for the quarter. It actually starts to tell us about market sentiment for the stock. So the brand's perception, as we know, Elon Musk has been involved in the current US administration, and there's been some backlash as a result of that. And then it talks about the potential impacts of tariffs on Tesla. And this is one of the things I love the most about ChatGPT is that it actually gives you a stock chart. So you no longer have to go to Yahoo Finance or other sources to get your stock charts. You can get it right here. So you can see what it's done year to date, and you can look at that performance. So it's down 33.5% year to date. Over the last year, it's still up 47%. And over the last 5 years, it's up 385%, which is great. So it tells us what Tesla stock has done and what the volatility has looked like over the past year. Now, these are not actual numbers, these are predicted numbers. So what we might want to do is actually ask to perform the same exercise for Q4 of 2024. So let's do that. Can you please perform the same analysis for Q4 of 2024? And then we wait as it works through its process to get us the information. So here we're provided with the breakdown of Q4 of 2024, and you can see that revenue is up by 2%, which is not very much for a stock that's trading at a very high multiple. Earnings per share was down. Well, it was at 73 cents versus what was expected of 77 cents. Net income is down significantly from the prior year as tax breaks have started to roll off. That's down. Gross profit is down. Gross margin is declining. So at first glance, from a financial highlights perspective, it looks like the performance of Tesla's, the business, is declining compared to prior periods. The only place where it saw some growth is in revenue versus the prior year. Then it talks about vehicle deliveries. So this is a good sign. Vehicle deliveries are up year over year, which is great, but it was below what was anticipated for the quarter. So 2.28% growth there. And then it breaks it down by each of the models and tells us what the expected full year deliveries look like for the business. And then Tesla also has its energy and storage business, and it tells about how many gigawatts were delivered in the quarter, which is great. Talks about the strategic initiatives for the business, the plans to launch unsupervised FSD, full self-driving. If you own a Tesla, you know what that is. It's a great tool. Really makes driving feel less stressful. Cybercab, robotaxi, future initiative, affordable EV model. So they're looking to build a car that is more affordable and budget friendly. The average price of a Tesla car is north of $50,000, and that's not affordable for most Americans and most people around the world. And if Tesla wants to continue to grow its revenue, it's going to have to find a way to create a model that is within range. And then it talks about AI and robotics, and a lot of these strategic initiatives is why Tesla trades at a high multiple. So just looking at the financial highlights from the quarter, just looking at this, I would want to dig in more to really understand what the future prospects of the business are. It looks like the metrics are either flat or declining on a year-over-year basis, which could indicate that there's competition. But it also talks about the fact that the tax breaks that used to exist for electric vehicles in the United States might be impacting the stock. So there you have it. The fundamental analysis is leading us to believe that at least question a potential investment in Tesla stock. The next bucket of analysis we'll do is technical analysis. So really from our perspective for the retail investor, we're just looking at what its chart looks like. What does the chart of Tesla look like? And does that give us any indication as to whether it might be a good time to invest in it or not? So what I'm going to ask here, ChatGPT, is pull up a chart of Tesla showing its performance over the last week, month, year, and 5 years. Let's see what it pulls up. So here's what it pulled up for us. So it shows us its performance summary, tells us its performance over the last week, 5% up over the last month, 9% up. Year to date, 37% down. Does that represent an opportunity? Well, we'll find out. Over the last year, 44% up. So it's still significantly up over the last year, even though it's down over the year to date. And then over the last 5 years, it's up 402%. One of the things that we want to do is we want to verify with additional sources as well. If we wanted to see the stock chart specifically, we would pull up one of these additional sources to see the stock chart itself. So it provides us some key observations from its stock price performance over the periods that we asked it for. In the short term, in the past week and past month, it's shown some modest gains. So there's some positive momentum right now. Year to date, though, it's down significantly. Over the last 5 years, it's up over 400%. So it's still a massive outperformer. The S&P in that period of time is up about 100% or so. So from a stock price performance perspective, it's done really well over the last 5 years. Over the last month or so, it's done okay. Year to date, it's down significantly. So does that represent an opportunity for us to invest? Well, there's more analysis that we need to do to make that final call, and we'll do that next. The next bucket of questions that we'll ask ChatGPT are in the area of sentiment on the stock. So analyzing the news, analyzing what is going on social media regarding the stock, analyzing analyst upgrades and downgrades. So the question we might ask is, summarize the most recent news articles affecting Tesla and analyze their potential impact on the stock. So here's what it gave us. It went through and looked at a bunch of articles that you can see cited here. So it's cited where it's getting its information from, which is great for us. It gives us more confidence that the information that we're getting out of the tool is based off of actual articles and it's not hallucinating, which these AI tools can do sometimes. But I love how it breaks it down into buckets. So it talks about negative developments in Tesla stock, talks about positive developments in Tesla stock, talks about the stock performance overview, which is a key piece of it. We just went over that. And then it talks about its upcoming events and any other recent developments that are occurring. So starting with the negative development. So it talks about the decline in deliveries. This is a confirmation of what we had initially looked at in our first set of questions. So it's good that it's looking at that information. So deliveries were at 336,000 for Q1, which marks a 13% decrease. And it talks about why the decrease is occurring. It talks about increased competition from Chinese EV manufacturers. One of them is BYD. Anyone who follows Tesla stock should know who BYD is because they're nipping at the heels of Tesla from the perspective of making the best EV cars and reaching markets that Tesla currently can't because of the price of the vehicles. So competition is sometimes a good thing, and sometimes makes us more effective at building a better product for our customers. So competition is not always a bad thing. And then it talks about consumer backlash against Elon Musk because of his involvement in the current US administration. And that's what it's talking about here, the brand image challenges. So Elon Musk is working in the administration, and there are parts of the population that don't like that. And that has actually resulted in people taking it out on Tesla vehicles in certain situations. Some analysts are worried that the brand damage is unprecedented. It doesn't mean that it cannot be reversed, but that there's some brand damage associated with Elon Musk's current involvement with the government. And they've lowered their profit estimates as a result of that. Analyst downgrades as well. So UBS downgraded Tesla to sell and a price target lower than where it is today. It's at 252 today. They downgraded it to 190. Goldman Sachs also reduced its target. So those are the negative developments. Now for the positive developments, there are also positive developments as well. So in the United States, there's recently been a 90-day exemption on certain tariffs, including those affecting components critical to Tesla's production. So that's a positive thing, which means that the costs associated with tariffs are delayed for an additional 90 days. So that's good. Sure, that's a short-term benefit to the stock. There are products that are in the works that are coming here in the next few months. One of them is the Cybercab and the Robotaxi. So those are big products, and that could potentially change the trajectory of where this business is going. And then we talked about analyst downgrades. Well, there's still some analysts that are pretty optimistic about the future of this business. So they say, despite recent challenges, some analysts remain optimistic about Tesla's long-term prospects in the advancements of AI and autonomous driving technologies. So it's important to remember that Tesla is not just a car company. It is a car company that is also at the forefront of designing EV vehicles, but also at the forefront of the implementation of AI in multiple different segments, not just in cars. So we talked about the full self-driving technology, which will help in its cyber cabs. Tesla is also investing in humanoid robots that could also help bring costs down from a manufacturing perspective and from the execution of work perspective. And so the future of Tesla might go beyond just building vehicles. And that's what these analysts are optimistic about. And then it goes over the stock price performance overview, which we did before. And it's down year to date 37%. And it's important not to just look at the price of a stock and how much it's declined to determine if we're going to get in or not. But it does say something that it's down significantly and might be cheaper than where it was initially, which might give us a good entry point to grow with the stock. Now, there's several other pieces of analysis that we need to do to determine if the stock is cheap or not. And that's looking at things like its price to earnings ratio, looking at its free cash flow generation, and looking at the prospects of the stock related to the fundamentals that we talked about initially when we began this conversation. So what do you think, based on the sentiment here, how would you evaluate Tesla's potential? Why don't you comment below and talk about what you think about Tesla, the business, based on the three key buckets we've looked at now. So we've looked at the fundamentals of the business. So it's revenue growth, its earnings growth, its price to earnings ratio. We've also looked at technical analysis or the stock performance over the last week, month, year, 5 years. And then now we've looked at the business from a sentiment perspective and what the news is saying about it, what analysts think about it, and trying to use those pieces of information to decide if this would be a good time to invest in the stock or not. We're not done. There's one more area that we need to look at, and it's arguably the most important area that we should look at. So after we've looked at the fundamentals of the stock, we've looked at technical analysis or stock price performance on a chart, and we've also looked at what the new sentiment has to say about the stock. Arguably, the most important thing that we need to pay attention to is this. How is the company positioned for the future? What is its strategic positioning? What has it been in the past? And what is it today in preparation for what the future is going to look like? What is it today? And what is the company going to look like in the future from a strategic perspective? So how do we get ChatGPT to give us a sense for what that is? There are a few prompts that we can leverage to do this. So I'll start with this one. Let's compare Tesla's market share today versus what it was 5 years ago and what we expect it to be going forward. So I might say something like compare Tesla's market share in the EV market industry to its main competitors. Let's see what it gets us. So here's the analysis that it came up with for us. So it says, as of early 2025, which is where we're recording this video, Tesla's position in the EV market is facing increased competition from both established automakers and emerging players. And then it gives us a sense for what the global market share for each of its competitors look like. So Its biggest competitor is BYD, which has 22% of the market. Tesla is second at 10. Wuling, which is another Chinese manufacturer, has 4%, and BMW is next there. And then from a US perspective, Tesla sold 128,000 vehicles. Ford is a distant second, and Chevy is next, and then BMW is next. And this is all for just Q1 of 2025. And then it does the same analysis for Europe, tells us what Tesla's market segments look like. And then what I really love is the presentation here, looking at the summary table. So globally, Tesla has 10% of global share, and the leading competitor is BYD at 22%. And so this is great, but something we might want to know is how this has changed over time. So we might ask ChatGPT, how has Tesla's share changed over time, and how do we expect it to change in the future? And then we wait to see what it gets us. The response to that question is very revealing. So Tesla's global market share was at 17 to 19% from 2018 to 2020. Then it declined to 13.2% in 2023, and in 2024, it's at 10.3%. So you can see that its share of the EV market continues to decline. In the United States, it's seen a decline as well, though not as pronounced as its global share, but it declined nonetheless. In Europe, it's seen its market share decline by half. So that is a very revealing statistic. In every single market in which the business operates in, it's seen its market share decline. Now, that again by itself isn't as concerning. Let me give you an example of why. So let's assume that, and it's going to be a lot more than this, and we'll ask ChatGPT. Let's assume that 1 million cars are sold this year, but next year, 5 million cars are sold. If your share this year was 20% of 1 million cars, that's 200,000 cars. But if your share is 10% of 5 million cars, that's 500,000 cars. So that means that even though its share might be declining, if the market is growing, it still might be a good thing. Although you always want to kind of maintain your dominant market share regardless of the case. So it's not all good news, or it's not good news if your share is declining by as significant an amount as it is for Tesla today. So looking at that and looking at its future outlook, right? So we have a summary here. So increased competition from BYD and a bunch of auto manufacturers, the fact that Tesla doesn't have a low-cost product, innovations by competitors like BYD is creating additional competition, and then the brand perception of Tesla, all not moving in the right direction for the stock. So why don't you comment below, what do you think about Tesla's strategic positioning based on the analysis that we've got here? Would you see it as being in a dominant position going forward? Would you see it as being in a place where it needs to rethink its positioning and find lower cost vehicles in order to continue to maintain some level of a respectable market share going forward? How do you think about your potential investment in Tesla based on these statistics that we've looked at? So what we see here in Tesla is a stock that has some pros and some cons to it from an investment perspective. So from a revenue perspective, it's flat year over year. From a cars delivered perspective, that number is down year over year. There's concern over tariffs and how that could impact its costs going forward, which could further depress margins. We also see a business that is declining from a market share perspective, from 21% at its high, all the way down now to roughly 10% on a global basis. From a technical perspective, there might be some opportunity. The stock price is close 37% below its all-time high. But again, the price of a stock doesn't necessarily reflect that it's trading at a discount. There are other things we need to do from an analysis perspective to determine if it makes sense to buy the stock or not. Some analysts believe in the stock and some analysts don't believe in the stock. However, a big piece of what's driving Tesla sentiment today is Elon Musk's involvement with the Trump administration and what he's doing there. And that has impacted some people's view of the brand. From a strategic positioning perspective, Tesla needs to produce cheaper cars in order to be able to compete with its large Chinese competitors, or else it could result in Tesla being the premium brand, but not being able to scale to match the expectations that are associated with a lofty stock price. All of this analysis we were able to get at our fingertips pretty quickly by just putting the right prompts into ChatGPT and still having our investors hat on and directing it in a way that allows us to evaluate all the key aspects of the company. So I'd like you to comment below. What are you doing with your Tesla stock? Are you adding more to it? What do you believe about the future of the business? Do you think that this represents an opportunity for the company to innovate, build lower cost products, and drive into the future? Also, leave a comment below about the stock you'd like us to evaluate next. I'll see you in the next one.